everyone, welcome to the Rundown. Thanks to AGL for all your energy needs. Go to agl.com.au. Speaking of energy, West Coast ran out of energy against Collingwood. Ryan Daniels from 7 News is here, of course, and also Manchester United's Public Relations Officer, and Andrew Embley, Eagles Premiership player, Norm Smith medalist. Let's go back to last week, albeit we sat here and we said, it's a walk in the park, they'll set up top spot, they'll get 2 home finals, it's all over. What happened?
Well, a couple of their big guns stood up. The players that we spoke about, you spoke about how important Mycheck was, Mason Cox, a couple of guys that hadn't been in great form. They were very important in their forward line. No doubt a few injuries to West Coast, I think, hurt their rotations. We'll speak a little bit about that later. But I thought it was a game that we expected that West Coast were going to win, but unfortunately they haven't, and puts a bit of pressure on them now, Ryan.
I think when the 2 injuries happened at the start of that game, Jamie Cripps and Darcy Moore, it threw a lot of chaos into things, and West Coast was suddenly too big and Collingwood was suddenly faster. And that's just kind of a massive advantage, I think, to what Buckley was doing with the team after those injuries happened. Now, Cripps is a huge loss. The Eagles rate him as one of their best players, and that's because he's probably their best runner when you're talking just between the 250s. It's such an important role.
It is, and they've got to find a replacement for him. We'll have more on that a little bit later. Staying on that game briefly, Collingwood just made some changes at halftime, whatever they be. West Coast didn't adjust, but is it throw the baby out with the bathwater? West Coast, they're still obviously right in it.
Definitely not. No, I think, in full credit to Nathan Buckley, I thought Chris Main's job on Shannon Hearn was important. Their big fellas really worked for each other inside their forward 50. For mine, just with Cripps going down early and also with Nic Nat on limited game time, there were small things, but they ended up being big things, because what happened was Nic Nat was never going to increase his workload, but it meant that everyone else had to actually spend a little bit more time out on the ground. And I think when it came to crunch time in that last quarter, West Coast just would look like they were running with cement boots on. And on the flip side to that, Treloar, Chris was doing a really good job on Shuey, side bottom, Pendlebury, they really started to find the football, and Shuey and Gaff in particular didn't find any footy in that last quarter.
They're 2 premiership contenders. You're going to have games that go either way, and you're going to win games away from home sometimes in these ones, and you're going to lose that at home. It just happens. So I don't think it's baby out with the bathwater stuff. This win meant a lot to Collingwood. It basically saved their season in terms of a premiership campaign. What it does for West Coast is it just pushes them back a little bit. This was their chance to go clear. They've lost that chance, but it's not over. I mean, they could bounce back pretty easily this week.
Well, they certainly can, and they go to Alice Springs where they take on Melbourne, an impartial venue, of course. What do we rate their chances on bouncing back at a venue, and what chances do we give Melbourne, who really are off the pace?
Well, I think West Coast should bounce back. They've got a good record against the Demons. Ideally, the game would be at the MCG, but they go to a neutral ground. Melbourne don't have a great record up there either. So I think with Melbourne, though, they've got a good midfield, a good enough midfield to be able to ask questions of the West Coast Eagles. So they're still ranked 3rd in the competition for contested possessions. Max Gawn looks like he's starting to get a bit of continuity.
No, but that's the midfield of last year. It's not like Angus Brayshaw has been...
Brayshaw hasn't been great.
Very poor this year.
And Oliver hasn't been
He hasn't.
at his absolute best.
No.
But the thing is, they are capable. They are capable of being able to produce.
I disagree.
West Coast need to prepare for Melbourne's midfield at their absolute best.
Of course, and they'll say that and they'll do that. But in reality, there's no way there's an excuse for this game. If Melbourne somehow win this game, then it's a concern for West Coast because, as I said, Angus Brayshaw has not been a shadow of his former self from last year, and he's a high draft pick and 3rd in the Brownlow last year. This year becoming 303rd. Clayton Oliver, as you mentioned, hasn't been fantastic either. Max Gawn's probably held his head up high, and James Harms has probably been their other good midfielder. Other than that, they really are struggling. And you mentioned Traeger Park. Well, they've won their last couple there, Melbourne, and they've played there 5 years in a row. West Coast have never played an official game there. They've played a pre-season game, and it's a big ground. It's a different ground. That's one thing that could throw a spanner.
I don't think any of us are expecting Melbourne to win this particular game, but I think it's a game that West Coast need to have enormous amount of respect for Melbourne because of the fact that, yes, you are right, they have played there a lot more times than West Coast. So it's a game that Eagles should win, but I tell you what, you want to be preparing for this one really well.
West Coast an anywhere, anytime type of team. I think I've heard that somewhere before. They just got to get in, get the win, get out, as they say, bank the points. To do so, Josh Kennedy may have to find some form. We know that he's been sadly down on form. I heard him on radio during the week. He said his body's never felt better. He's in great shape. He feels like he's making a contribution. If you're Melbourne, do you go to man up Josh Kennedy or do you go to man up Jack Darling?
You still have to man up Josh Kennedy first. You do, because of what he is capable of. And this is the value of Josh Kennedy. He hasn't kicked a goal for a couple of weeks. He's definitely out of form. He may be feeling fantastic, but he is out of form in terms of his impact. But what he brings just by reputation, just by walking out there and they're panicking, saying, geez, Josh Kennedy, if we let him go, he'll kick 6. There's no way yet that Darling is the main man, and that's great for Jack Darling, because when that day comes, things will shift a little bit. But right now, just purely based on reputation, if I'm an opposition coach, I worry about Kennedy first.
It's great that we're having this conversation. There's not any other club in the competition that have got 2 powerful forwards that opposition defenders go, which one am I going to go to this week? Yes, Jack Darling's in some really good form at the moment. Josh Kennedy hasn't kicked a goal in his last 3 weeks. We know he's missed one particular game. But the one thing about Josh Kennedy is I don't 100% believe that his body is 100% right, but he's a no-excuse person. And he's the first person to admit, listen, I'm not in great form and I'm not going to make any excuses about that. JK is that far away from, I think, getting hit in the scoreboard, and when him and Darling can both contribute and play some really good football together, then look out opposition.
We saw it last year in the final against Collingwood. He hadn't played in, I think, 6 weeks. He was terrible in that first half.
He was
missing easy shots, dropping easy marks, getting beaten in every single contest. Half time comes and the real Josh Kennedy stood up and he was basically won the game. He was kicking goals from everywhere. His confidence was up. Next thing you know, they're in a grand final and they're winning a flag. So that's why you don't write Josh Kennedy off, but he's definitely out of form.
Okay, so Nic Nat Nui goes down. We see that. Again, it raises the question. Nathan Vardy's not far away. Hickey's done an awesome job. There's a couple of blokes in the waffle. What is the best combination going forward, in your opinion, Ron?
The best combination at the moment is Hickey and Oscar Allen, because we've seen it. It works. But I want to throw a bit of a left field option in here. And this is a guy that, in the pre-season, he was kind of exciting. He's got hair like Carl Langdon. He can leap. He's one of those guys that you just know if he gets a chance at the top level, he is going to rattle some heads. He's going to have an impact. Bailey Williams should be given a chance at some point, just to see what they've got here. I think his waffle form has been pretty good, but I think it's just the fact that he's one of those guys that he's got a man's body already as a young man. He's got the right attitude, and I think he can have an impact. So that's a left field one.
Yeah, well, it's not so left field. Saw him play last week against West Perth at Mineral Resources Park, and his last quarter with a combination of Petrocelli, and that raises the next question about where we play Petrocelli this week, because I think he should come into the lineup. Can I just say, I saw him play, and Williams' last quarter was Nat Nui-esque. Absolutely. When West Perth couldn't get off the ground, he dominated the last quarter. It was one of the best quarters of football I've seen a young man play. Then you go the flip side, you go to Keegan Brooksby, who's just a big-bodied man who will make it difficult for opposition ruckmen. And Keegan Brooksby was recruited for a reason, and that was to come in when their ruck stocks were down. Their ruck stocks are down, so you can go either way.
Okay, that's fine. Bailey Williams, you want to come in? Who does he come in for right now?
I'm not saying he comes in this week. I just want to see him try
But if he does come in, who is he replacing?
If he comes into the side, question without notice, I haven't got the 22 in front of me.
No, but Vardy's the one.
Vardy's not
on the side at the moment.
But that's not about this week. It's about the combination going forward to the end of the year with Nat Nui doesn't play.
So the combination is Hickey and Bailey Williams. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Nat Nui's out.
With Oscar Allen on the side, absolutely. So you're saying you play those 3 tools. You have Oscar Allen.
Well, what's the difference? You've got to have a tool.
Yeah, that's the answer.
So you have all 3 of them. So I think that's just too tall.
Well,
What about Jake Waterman, kick 6? So Jake Waterman can go up and play the Oscar Allen role because he does play high, mid, and then
So you're saying you have Bailey Williams, Hickey, Oscar, and Jake Waterman in the side?
No, if you're not going to play Bailey Williams. So let's just pare it back for you, Embers. I'll speak slowly for you, right? So what happens is, so you've got Hickey's a lock.
Hickey's a lock, yes.
Correct. So
We're doing match committee here on the fly.
So Nat Nui's out. This is long term.
Absolutely. I'm
so
talking
Nat Nui's
about
long term.
I hear
Okay.
you.
So Hickey. Vardy, question mark, coming back off knee, probably 2 weeks away, maybe 1. Right. So leave him out of the equation for now. Ryan's going Bailey Williams. I'm going, I can go Bailey Williams. But if you want to play Allen as your ruckman and you don't need Bailey Williams, Waterman can come in.
Yes. 2 options.
Oh, yeah, I hear that.
Breathe, Tim. Breathe, Tim. Okay, so what did we come up with?
I think we're giving Bailey Williams a debut. Is that what just happened?
And who have you locked
No, you blokes are panicking too much. At the moment, it stays Hickey and Allen for mine.
So you bring Waterman into the team.
Well,
As
we'll
the
speak
Allen
about that a
role,
little
just
bit,
shift that over.
a bit further.
No, we'll speak about it
I think we go a bit smaller. Well, I think.
Okay, well, let's go small then. Let's go to the next stage where Cripps is out for 4 weeks with an adductor. Huge blow. You mentioned at the
Massive
start of the
blow,
show
yes.
what a key player is, a key component. I saw Petrocelli, didn't get a kick in the first quarter last week, didn't touch the footy, ended up with 5 goals, hit 3 1/4 with 3 kicks, I think, and then finished the game midfield. there's going to be role change. Do you agree? A role change for Rioli to allow Petrocelli. What's the combination there in replace of Cripps?
Well, I think Petrocelli comes into the side purely because of his work rate and his speed. As a small forward, he trained there all through the pre-season, almost to replace that Mark Lacroix role. And when he was out there, he provided something a little bit different. I think he's going to be absolutely crucial for the West Coast Eagles to come back into the side. So for mine, it's a straight swap this week. I think it's a very exciting forward line, no doubt about that. And yes, they might be a little bit small, those smaller forwards, but they put on pressure and they know how to kick goals and they make defenders accountable.
My only issue with that is, and I think that is what will happen, it is the specifics of the role. And Tim, you mentioned Rioli shifting to the Cripps role, because Petrocelli, and you touched on it when you said he didn't touch the ball for a couple of quarters and then had a fantastic second half and last quarter. That's not Jamie Cripps. Jamie Cripps is consistent. Every quarter he has his little impact, and over the course of a game, you're like, oh yeah, Jamie Cripps was pretty good. Whereas Petrocelli, it's like, how was that fourth quarter from Petrocelli? And so you don't want to lose that consistent runner throughout, and they're very different runners. So my question is, how do you fix that? You have to bring Petrocelli, and he's the obvious one. Is it Rioli?
Rioli plays forward 50, the role. So he plays the just stay-at-home small forward role. We've still got Cameron. Ryan plays up high. He's a 50.
But who feels Jamie Cripps is running? This is the concern.
Petrocelli does.
Petrocelli does.
Petrocelli does. He's good enough, mate. He's got a big enough tank. He's explosive. He probably actually adds that explosive X factor to their lineup that they may have missed last week against Collingwood.
I believe he brings a lot to the table. I just think they're so different. They look the same size, and
but you're not going to get a lot for a lot.
This is what I'm saying. I think you might need to shift things, whether it be Rioli or Ryan or even Cameron, someone to fill the Cripps role. He's a better runner endurance-wise and not just an impact pace runner. So that's the thing. And I'm not saying it won't work, but things have to shift a little to make the Jamie Cripps situation work. Maybe Chris Marston gets involved somehow with his running.
So potentially you're saying that we could actually shift someone. Yes. Maybe bring Waterman in and get someone else to play Rioli right.
Bailey Williams.
Yeah, Bailey Williams. Oh, geez,
can I imagine how long and how many pizzas we would go through if we were match committee?
Oh, yeah.
We'd have about 14 blokes. We'd go, all right, we're going to find 8 more.
6 weeks we'd have a team.
Yeah.
Lost 6 games in the meantime.
Yeah, I reckon if Simo's watching this, he's going, you know what, next week you three are going to join us.
Win, the margin to beat Melbourne, we all agree they'll beat Melbourne at Alice Springs. What's the headline we'll see after the game, Ryan, in regards to West Coast?
West Coast unearth a new star in Bailey Williams. No, I think it's West Coast, get back on track. It's simple as that. It just doesn't have to be a fantastic win. It just has to be a bank the 4 points, get into this stadium they've never played at, and get out with a win and no injuries.
JK's back.
It'll just be West Coast, get in, get out, and another win for them. Hey, well done, boys. Good stuff. A lot of debate about the team going forward. This has been the rundown. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks to Andrew Embley for AGL. For all your energy needs, go to agl.com.au.